The man re-entered the conversation, formally introducing himself to everyone present, and declared that he would take full responsibility for every life within the gate. However, he warned them not to place too much hope in being saved by him, as the nature of this place was unpredictable, and leading anyone here would be no simple task. He then revealed that due to the difficulties ahead, he had decided to form a separate team to clear the dungeon, a statement that slightly surprised the boy. The man emphasized that if they remained idle, most of them would simply freeze to death, and if no one volunteered to assist him in the cleanup operation, he would proceed alone. Not long into his speech, he asked who among them was willing to join him in clearing this place and returning home as soon as possible. Observing the growing tension and desperation, he saw people gradually stepping forward, willing to follow him in the hope of escape. Standing quietly behind them, the boy considered that their chances of survival would certainly increase if they joined forces with an A-ranked hunter, regardless of how odd the situation seemed. Suddenly, the man shoved one guy in the chest, forcing him to sit back down, firmly stating that he wouldn't be taking him along. The man continued by listing who was eligible to join, and who wasn't, later apologizing for not being able to accept those ranked C or lower. He remained serious, explaining that the journey would be long and harsh, and he couldn't afford to carry dead weight on his team. Though some were offended by the remark, another voice reminded them not to take it personally. Their shared goal was simply to survive until the dungeon boss was defeated. The man, still focused, spoke sincerely and hoped that his efforts would not be in vain, aiming to gather a capable and cooperative team. Just then, his attention was drawn by a girl who approached him and asked if she could switch teams, hinting either at having found someone she preferred or wanting to leave her current arrangement. He told her she was free to do as she wished, though he silently wondered if her request was motivated by sympathy. Turning back to the group, he announced that since he now had one seat open, he could take one more person. At that very moment, the previously rejected guy reappeared, shouting that he wanted to join. As this unfolded, the girl walked past the boy, who had been observing everything from the sidelines. She remarked aloud that unlike Jin-Woo, Kim Chul hadn't even noticed the flying arrow, her voice tinged with amazement. The green-eyed girl turned toward the boy, a slight smile on her lips, and mused to herself, clearly beginning to suspect that Jin-Woo was not in fact an E-rank hunter. The red gate remained closed, and one of the people left outside remarked that he had tried to gain Jin-Woo's trust, convinced that Jin-Woo had been awakened twice. The man listened attentively to the chief's speech, then asked him if he was sure of his version. The chief, looking down as though there was something he wasn't revealing, nodded in agreement. The man, after hearing this, said that in that case their only hope was Kim Chul. The chief thought to himself that if the master had met Jin-Woo in person, the latter would have figured things out for himself. Just then, the head of the management department, Ju Sung-chan, appeared, stating that Kim Chul should have no issues in this situation. He continued by saying that Kim Chul's training results were impressive, and his strength was as formidable as their guild's main attack force master. The master only exhaled, acknowledging that Kim Chul was indeed an A-ranked hunter, and with him as the raid captain, he could easily manage the B-ranked hunters to mop up the dungeon. The leader mentioned having heard rumors about an E-ranked hunter with reawakening abilities, but he was quick to add that Kim Chul was far superior to that hunter. The chief, observing the reactions of others, pondered who would be correct in this situation, as they all awaited the fate of the strong hunters in this ominous place. After a while, a car arrived at the scene. The door opened and a man stepped out, asking what was going on. He stomped his feet on the ground and announced that he had heard a C-rank gate was here, but it seemed this gate actually had an A-rank. A slightly hunched man with a sly smile and an intimidating presence came into view. He asked what the White Tiger Guild master was doing here. The red-haired man, clearly not expecting to encounter Hwang Dong-soo, who he couldn't stand, was visibly pissed off by his mere presence. The people standing nearby were shocked, as was the master himself. Even the leader stuttered. The man, an S-rank hunter, smirked and adjusted his glasses, saying he hadn't seen Baek Yun-ho in a while. Everyone was dumbfounded and asked what he was doing in Korea. He casually replied that he had come to handle some business, but hadn't expected to see Baek Yun-ho here. Instantly, the master grew angry, his gaze frantic, as he demanded to know what business he had in Korea, living in the United States and operating on guild property. The man smiled, mentioning the White Tiger Guild and saying he wanted to ask the master something. He then inquired about a certain lousy hunter. Realizing the others didn't know who he was talking about, the man clarified that it was the E-rank hunter. However, the master didn't understand who that was. Irritated, he listened as the man spoke of Jin-Woo, who had entered the gate with the others. The master, eyeing the man as he approached the red gate, was puzzled about how he knew of Jin-Woo. The man, meanwhile, seemed to realize something as he looked at the red gate in front of him. The boy, watching with a keen gaze, wanted to ask a question with someone else's permission. He asked why the girl, being a new recruit, reacted so calmly. The girl replied that the first thing she was taught was that anything could happen in the dungeon, and that even Hunter Kim Chul had undergone special training. Several hunters and recruits split into two groups, each speaking of their own direction. The group of hunters led by Kim Chul turned away, heading down the trail they had chosen, wishing each other good luck. Meanwhile, the remaining group, including Jin-Woo, also split up heading towards the forest together. The boy turned to the other group and mutually wished them good luck. The forest looked surprisingly gloomy yet beautiful at the same time, as snowflakes added a serene atmosphere to the place. As they walked, the boy, now behind the others, was accompanied by his new acquaintance, who was the first to start a dialogue. She remarked that she felt Jin-Woo wasn't going to answer her question. The boy considered the terrain surrounding him, pulling a vowel as if reluctant to continue the conversation. The girl, observing him, thought he must at least be an A-rank hunter. She was quite attentive to such details, gazing at him with her green eyes as though trying to peer into his soul. The two of them approached another group walking down a different trail, headed in the same direction but with a different goal. Kim Chul stopped, briefly calling someone an idiot. A man in large armor pointed towards a single tree which bore the prominent claw mark of a bear. He grudgingly stated that the rest of the group should have waited here, as the forest was ice bear territory. He also expressed his belief that because of the E-rank the others would just die. A man walking with Kim Chul amusingly asked if the E-rank hunter had any decent training, to which Kim Chul replied that there was no way he had received proper training. He was just an ordinary E-rank. At some point, Kim Chul became silent, his gaze turning serious as he noticed several C-ranks and even B-ranks in the group. But his thoughts were interrupted, and he decided that the fate of the rest of the group shouldn't concern him. They'd all be dead soon. He muttered that they'd be on their own. The man holding a large weapon and shield clearly struggled with the weight of his equipment, but it was an unpleasant reality. Kim Chul then loudly ordered his group to start preparing for battle. The man with the gold glasses stated that he had come all this way specifically for Jin-Woo, and now he was at the Red Gate. He realized how difficult it was to even catch a glimpse of this hunter. The master, however, seemed to understand very little of why so many people were so intensely interested in him. He couldn't comprehend why Jin-Woo in particular was surrounded by such influential personalities.